We are going to talk about one of those movies that asks a question none of us want to answer, that we all want to ignore and continue on in our civilized society. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate all your support. So, in looking at the channel and just getting started, I noticed my most popular videos are two videos I did on 10 horror movies, underrated, hidden gems, those types of things that you might not have seen. And then the next few most popular after that had to do in some way or another around James Gunn. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to combine the two and talk about one of my favorite horror movies that was written by James Gunn called The Belko Experiment. And I got to tell you, I also picked this out because this is the one where I say, hey, you know what? I recommend it. I really enjoy it. Didn't get great reviews. Did about 12 million at the box office. Although to be fair, I think the budget was only about 5 million. So it did well in that respect. But anyway, the Belko experiment it asks one of the darkest, most uncomfortable questions you can ask an audience, which is basically a variation of how far would you go to survive? Or in this movie, more specifically, how quickly would you unalive your coworkers if a disembodied voice told you to? Yes, that is what the premise of the Belko experiment is. It was released in 2016, maybe 2017. I think it was might have been beginning of 2017. Written by James Gunn, as I said, yes, the same guy who brought you Guardians of the Galaxy, the same guy that's getting a lot of controversy out there heading up the DCU, especially with Superman finally being released this past summer. It's directed by Greg McLean of Wolf Creek fame, and it blends, believe it or not, corporate satire with full-blown survival horror. Yeah, the setup pretty simple, really. Kind of ingenious, but pretty simple. 80 American employees working in Bogota for Belko Industries. They arrive at their high rise and they expect, the usual routine, their coffees, their emails, their pointless meetings, quietly judging one another as well, all the classics of an office. Instead, the building locks down, giant metal shutters slam shut, and a voice booms over the intercom telling them to unalive two of their coworkers within the next half hour, or else it will happen to more of them. It's your typical casual Friday hijinks, right? Heading into the weekend, all pumped up. Let's pull some pranks, and that's how some people reacted to this at the beginning. From that moment on, but though we get a transformation to this escalating pressure cooker. Like I just mentioned, at first everyone's kind of, I guess, reacting how we all imagine we might in this situation. Maybe a little bit of panic, a little disbelief, some nervous jokes, and of course, again, this has to be a prank, right? That denial phase, because this isn't going to happen in real life. And that lasts just long enough for the real horror to sink in. Right at the center of that is this character, Mike Milch. He's played by John Gallagher Jr. He is the good guy, the moral compass, the guy we all like to think we'd be: calm, compassionate, refusing to hurt anyone no matter what, not playing into this game, the kind of coworker who probably brings cupcakes to the office just because. Of course, the complete opposite end of that is Barry Norris, the company's COO. He's played by Tony Goldwyn, and Barry is, well, he's the coworker who definitely would label his lunch and maybe add a hidden camera and possibly a tracking device so we know exactly who to punish later when it disappears. He's the guy who looks at unalive two coworkers and thinks, well, all right, let's get organized. Let's figure this out. Get the most efficient way to get this done and move on. And then the movie has this contrast between Mike and Barry, who becomes sort of the heart of the film. And it turns a simple unalive or be unalive setup into this larger morality war. Other people have to make choices based on what Mike and Barry are doing. We kind of get into how fragile is civilization really? Does morality hold up when the lights go out and the office printer stops working? So yeah, the Belko experiment, it wants you to squirm a little bit, and it definitely works in that regard. It does a pretty good job of building tension. It doesn't waste a lot of time. You know, we're not turning an hour and a half movie into 2:15. And once the situation becomes real, then the panic spreads like wildfire. Friendships crumble, clicks form instantly, shifting alliances, often dynamics you barely even notice. They suddenly become these life or death alliances. See people turn on each other. You see power grabs. You see, of course, fear overriding logic. And honestly, it's a brutally honest depiction of human nature in a crisis. And the script does not shy away from the ugliness of that, the dark humor that's sprinkled throughout. It makes hard moments hit even harder, and it doesn't wink at the audience. The film, yeah, it uses sarcasm and absurdity the way good satire should, a way of pointing out truths we don't like to think about. Because, nothing says corporate America like a group of people calculating which coworkers they're least attached to. And yeah, it doesn't shy away from the violence either. There is no dipping of the toes into the gore. It just flat out cannonballs right into the deep end. But it tries to keep it from being too gratuitous. The movie wants you to feel something on these choices, not just shock, but this discomfort, this recognition of you could be that character. What would you do in that situation? I mean, I think that's one of the most powerful things with this film. One of its greatest strengths is that it kind of turns the camera back on us. The Belko experiment isn't content. Well, in this day and age, man, everything's content, right? It isn't just content, which is entertaining you. It wants to challenge you. It wants you to walk away asking, what would I have done in that situation? And of course, we'd all like to believe we'd be Mike, right? Mike Milch, the one holding on to his humanity no matter the cost. But of course, the movie's not going to let you cling to that comforting illusion. It forces you to confront the possibility that maybe, under the right pressure, morality is a little bit flexible. Maybe civilization is a little thinner than we thought. Maybe the difference between compassion and violence, it's just one intercom announcement away. And that is to me the brilliance of this film. Yeah, it has its problems like any other, but overall, that message in it and going through or being along for the ride with what these characters go through, just beneath the blood and the satire and the twisted office dynamics. The Belko experiment really is a psychological mirror. It's being held up to us, and it's saying you are not as certain of your own goodness as you think you are. And that hits a lot harder than any gore or jump scare. Let me put it this way. Would you unalive one of your kids to save the other two? How much do you truly love your best friend? Right? Think about that. And the film moves fast, as I mentioned earlier. It doesn't overstay it welcome. It gets in, it smacks you around, punches you in the face with these ethical dilemmas, and office supplies turn into weapons. And it gets out. There's no filler. There's no wasted time. Is it fun? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess if your definition of fun includes moral collapse and blunt force trauma, is it disturbing? Yes, it absolutely is, and it's definitely worth watching. And it succeeds because it's more than just a violent survival thriller. It is a social experiment. That is the whole point of the movie, is it a social experiment being performed on these office workers and a little bit on us, exposing uncomfortable truths about human nature and then how do we react to that? It's satire, it's horror, it's dark comedy. It's a corporate training video made by someone who really, really hates corporate training videos. And it dares to ask that question, are we civilized because we choose to be, or because circumstances allow us to be, or because we're terrified of the consequences of not being civilized in a civilized society? And honestly, that's why it's so compelling. It's not supernatural or paranormal or even particularly unrealistic, really, when you think about it. It's horror that hits really, really close to home. So if you're looking for something intense, right? This is not Scream. This is not a meta slasher flick. some of them maybe thought provoking, a little bit brutal, and I think surprisingly sharp. Something that turns the workplace into a battleground and uses the chaos to explore what's hiding beneath the surface of everyday life and what we're all truly capable of. Belko experiment definitely worth your time. But I am going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments below. Thanks so much for checking out the video. Really do appreciate it. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying it, and I will talk to you in the next video.